Hello. In this video I'm going to be demonstrating the installation of Ricochet's half-inch UHMW skid plate set on a 2018 Kawasaki Teryx 4-seater. Now as far as the skid plates goes, they're actually the exact same between the 2-seater and the 4-seater, so this video will be identical regardless of which model you have. So with this set, I prefer to start at the top, so I'm going to grab the very front skid plate. And then the cup washers. I'm going to put this skid plate into position here and just pick a cup washer and go ahead and start it. Doesn't really matter which one. Right now we're just going to start the front 5 mounts. The back are common, so we need to get the other plates on before we do anything with those. So these are just going to be the front 5 mounts. Okay, all those are started. Now I'm just going to go ahead and just snug these up. Not even snug them really. I'm just going to bring the bolts in, but leave everything loose so the plate still, moves around just for adjustment as we install all the other plates. One thing about this machine, I really would highly recommend not using an air ratchet on any of these 6mm bolts. Kawasaki, they're using what's called a rib nut in the frame, and it's nice because if you, damage the thread or whatnot, you can actually drill this out and install a new one. But it's very easy if you use an air tool to spin it. And if you spin it, you're gonna have a good time getting it out. So I would highly suggest just using hand tools only on all of the 6mm bolts in this set. Some of the 8mm you could probably get away with using an air ratchet on those on our hardware. It's much beefier hardware or whatnot, but especially on the 6mm, just use hand tools only. So like I said, I'm not tightening anything here. As you can see, the plate still moves around. I've got plenty of room to adjust anything if I need to. So that takes care of that plate. I'm gonna go ahead and move on down the line to the next one. Now this plate, you'll see, has been relieved, machined on the back side here, much like the back part of this plate. This is actually going to overlap this plate. So when you install it, keep that in mind that it will overlap the plate like that. But I'm just going to start this center bolt right here for now. These are everything we've done so far is your 6x16 flange bolts. So I'm just going to start all those. Again, just leaving everything loose. Okay, so that's all the 6x16s. We still have these top 2 mounts here. And what you're gonna wanna do is just line that up with the slot in this front plate. You'll see the slot. Just line that up with the hole. And anywhere where we're using a common mount, there's 2 here, and there's 1 back here, and I think that's it, to be honest with you. But, oh, and then the 2 sides here. We'll deal with those when we put the floorboard on. So anywhere you're using a common mount, it's going to be the longer 6x25 bolt, not the 6x16s. So we're going to go ahead and just grab those 2 for now. And again, this is all nice and loose, you can see everything moves around, so we'll be able to get everything on and aligned, and then we'll bolt everything down tight. So that takes care of that. Now we're ready to move on to the very rear plate. Okay, in the rear plate, it's gonna fit. It's got the same relief, same machining, same as the backside as this. So it's gonna fit the same way your other plates did. So you're gonna take it, and you're just gonna slide it underneath this plate, and you pull it down a little bit if you need to. And then again, I'm just gonna start the 6x16 flange bolts. And that's just gonna hold this plate into position. More here. Okay, so that takes care of all of our 6x16s, and again, we've got the one common mount right here. So that's going to be your longer bolt that isn't the flange. And again, you're just going to line up that slot with a hole and start the bolt. And we're leaving everything loose still. Okay, so that just leaves us the two rear mounts. They're a little bit different. So on the two rear mounts, it's got these bar clamps that we provide. They've got a welded nut to it, and it's an all metal lock nut. So you want to use anti-seize on any of the larger hardware we provide that uses the 8mm bolts. Whether it be the bar clamps or the tubing clamps, you want to put a generous amount of anti-seize on those. And it's actually easier to do this from behind the machine. You really won't be able to see me do it, but it's just easier to drop this in where it needs to go. So, gonna put a little anti-seize on the bolt. It doesn't take much, just a little smear. Okay, and this clamp, if you come in from behind, you're going to see two big holes in the frame, just drainage holes. And that's where that's going to go. You run your bolt through it, you'll see the bolt come through, and then just take your bolt with the heavy-duty washer and the long spacer, run that through, and then you can grab the bar clamp on the back side. So that's that one started. And again, I'm just leaving everything loose. I'm not tightening anything yet. Okay, those are both started, so those are good for now. So that leaves us our floorboard skids now. Okay, so to install your floorboard plate, you can see it's got this, relief section or whatnot machined here. And that's going to slide underneath this plate here. This is your common mount. So to mount this, you need to come in from the side first, slide it under, and then you'll see how it just fits into position. And then you go ahead and just start a couple of your cup washers. Really just one, and this one will hang. Okay, so that's all the flange bolts. Now we just have the one common here, and again, you're just going to line up that slot with the holes so you can get the bolt through and get it started. There we go. Okay, so that's all the cup washers for this. Now the rest of the hardware for this plate's a little different. It's got a tubing clamp in the rear, and then it's nuts and bolts. For the nuts and bolts, it's a nylock nut. You don't necessarily have to put anti-seize on it. It wouldn't hurt, but it's not as big of a deal with the all-metal locking nut on our clamps. So that's up to you. A little anti-seize wouldn't hurt though. So with these bolts, it's going to be your bolt the heavy duty washer, and then the shorter spacer. And you'll see that you've already got a hole in the frame right here. And it should be pretty lined up already. But if not, you know, just move the plate around, line it up. And you get the bolt through. You've got this access hole right here. You can take the washer, run it through, slide it over the bolt. Now you can do the same thing with the nut. Be careful, try not to drop that nut. It's going to be a little difficult to fish out if you do. There's a little dexterity involved here, but just be patient and just catch the thread and you'll be okay. Okay, so there's that one. Do the clamp first. It might be a little easier to get in while this is still hanging down here. So your very rear mount here is this tubing clamp, and it's going to come through. You're just going to wrap it around the bar. So you'll take your clamp, wrap it around the bar, just rotate it up. It needs to kind of tuck through this floor, underneath this floorboard plastic here. It might help, you know, if you need to. Sometimes the plastic's a little tight. You can just take a little screwdriver and just, you know, slightly pry it out of the way and, you know, get it to run through. Check your alignment with the hole on the plate. Make sure that it's good there. And that's lined up. And then this one you do want to put anti-seize on because it has the all metal lock nut. So a little anti-seize on that. I'm just going to run the same deal, the same bolt with the heavy duty washer and the short spacer. Just run it through and get it started to catch the thread. So we're good there. That leaves us two more mounts. We've got these two right here. This one has a hole in it from the factory. This one does not. This is a drilled mount, but we are going to do that very last. So I am just going to worry about this one here for now. So it'll be just like we did earlier. And this one's actually a little bit easier to get to. If you have a small enough hand, you can actually reach through the frame and the floorboard here, and you don't have to worry about kind of fishing it up. So on this one, I'm just going to run it through like we did. See, I can get my hand in here, set the washer on top of the bolt, and then start the nut. Okay, so that takes care of all of our mounting points except for these two that need to be drilled out. And I'm actually going to tighten everything up before I drill those mounts out. Just to make sure that nothing moves around, that the plates are exactly where I want them. So at this point, you're ready to tighten everything down. Like I say, you don't want to use any hand tools, especially on these smaller bolts, or any air tools. You want to use hand tools only, especially on these smaller bolts. You're basically just looking for, you know, good plate alignment or whatnot. Everything's fitting nice and tight, and that all the cup washers are seated. So those are kind of the two things you're looking for. This is all looking pretty good. All my cup washers look like they're seated pretty well. My gaps between plates aren't bad. So we're ready to tighten it down. And it doesn't really matter where you start. You can start anywhere. We'll just start from the top and work our way back. Okay, that takes care of all the belly plates except for these two rear bolts. So you'll need a 13 millimeter socket for those. All the bigger bolts are a 13 millimeter socket. All the smaller ones are a 10 millimeter socket. And with this nut plate, you need to grab it so it doesn't rotate and turn on you. You can use, you know, a pair of pliers, pair of channel locks, or a 13 millimeter wrench on the nut plate itself. You know, you'll just have to grab it around the weld. There we go. Okay. Okay, so that takes care of that. Now we can come through and tighten up our floorboard skids. And again, just make sure all the cup washers are seated. Okay, so that takes care of all the 10mm bolts, the smaller bolts. So now we can go through and tighten up the hardware. There should be enough room for you to get a wrench in here and get on this nut, especially if your wrench has a little bit of a, you know, a bend to it, an angle to it. One's good. Again, this back one, I can actually get my hand in there. So that's what I'm going to do. Make it a little easier. I'm going to bring the whole wrench in. Turn it around. Okay, that just leaves us one more here. Okay, so that just leaves us our 2 spots to drill out now. For the video, I'm just going to do the one, but it's the exact same procedure for both sides. So I'm going to transfer punch this first. Just makes the process a little easier, keeps your drill from wandering. So I'm going to take about a 3/8 punch, 3/8, ½ inch, something like that. And I'm just going to put it right in the middle of that slot the best I can. Okay, so that gave me a punch mark. Okay, so first I'm going to do a pilot drill. The hole that you're going to drill out needs to be anywhere between 5/16 and 3/8. I usually go 11/32 because it's pretty much right in the middle. I'm just going to pilot drill here with, this is probably about a 3/16 drill bit. I'm just going to pilot drill this. Okay, so that's pilot drilled. And then we can come in with our final drill. Like I said, that can be anywhere between 5/16 and 3/8. I usually go 11/32, which is 0.344. Okay, so that's our drilled mount. And then it's going to be the same bolt with a heavy duty washer and the spacer with the fender washer and the nut. Be careful of any burr that you've kicked up on the backside drilling so you don't cut yourself. That could also kind of hang up your washer and your bolt too. If you got a big burr on the backside, it's going to affect how much that washer sits down and how many threads protrude and might fight you starting that nut. So if you feel up there and you got a big, heavy, gnarly burr, you might need to knock that down a little bit. Oh, come on. Okay, there we go. And then let's get up here with your wrench. Grab the nut and tighten her down. Okay, now that we have this rear mount drilled out on both sides with all the hardware in, that leaves us one more mounting spot to drill out. And that's this spot right here. Now this is really kind of an optional hole, to be honest with you. The only reason we really put this here is because there's no mounts on this plate right here, and the plate over time, just the plastic can kind of sag down a little bit. So all this mount's doing is just going to keep it tucked up tight to the underside of the frame. So like I say, it's an optional mount. If you don't feel like drilling that hole out, it's really not that big of a deal, but that plate may sag over time, just kind of the nature of the material. So before we're going to drill this out, first thing you need to do is pull this plastic cover off. It's just the, you know, the surround around the fuel tank or whatnot. And there's just 5 of these plastic pop rivets. Just pry the head out and pull the pop rivet out or whatnot. That's pretty self-explanatory. So there's 5 of those, and then you also have to take the gas cap off to get this cover off. And then, you know, just put the gas cap back on when you're done, and then you're ready to start drilling. Before we drill this out, I'm going to take the cup washer that we're supplying and a Sharpie, and is what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretty much center this up in the counterbore there, and then mark the center of the hole through the cup washer. Just using the cup washer just makes it a little bit easier to find the center of that hole. So once I've got it marked out, roughly centered, I mean there is some adjustment, you don't need to be perfect, but try and be as close as you can. Then I'm going to come through and center punch it just to make sure my drill bit doesn't wander. Now when you're drilling, you got to be a little careful because we do have the gas tank here on this side. On the other side it's totally open, there's nothing to run into, but on this side we got the gas tank. So as what we've done is we're going to supply you with a sleeve, a drilling sleeve, and it's just this piece of plastic. And all you're going to do is you're going to just go put it over your drill bit like that. So you've only got about 1/4 of an inch or so protruding from the end of this sleeve. And this sleeve is going to act like a stop. So when you do break through drilling, you're not going to, you know, push through with the drill bit and get into the gas tank. So it'll just butt up against this stop, and that's as far as it's going to go. So we're ready to drill. Like I said, I got it marked so it won't wander. The drill size you're going to want to use on this is probably anywhere between 1/4 of an inch and 9/32. Anywhere in there will be fine. Like I say, just line it up with your punch hole and start drilling. See, now like right there when it broke through, that's as far as that's going to go, and you've still got probably a ½ inch, maybe even 3/4 of an inch clearance to that gas tank. So that's the whole point of that sleeve. It's just to stop so you don't get up into the gas tank. Like I say, the other side, it's the exact same procedure, but you don't have the tank in the way on the other side, so it's not near as big of a deal on that side as it is on this side. So now that you have your hole drilled, make sure you don't have any big burrs or anything. That feels pretty good. And you're just going to run your cup washer and bolt through the hole. Come in here. It is a little tight. Get this nut started. Maybe I can get my hand in there. Okay, I'm going to slide the nut over, line it up with my hole. Run the bolt through and catch the thread. Okay, once you get the thread caught, then you can go ahead and just take a 10mm wrench or a pair of pliers or anything suitable to grab that nut and tighten it down. Go. Okay, that's good and tight, and that's going to keep this plate from, sagging down where it doesn't have a mount here. So that's all that's for. So like I say, you want to locate the center of it using your cup washer and a marker, and then center punch it, and then drill it. Make sure you have the drilling sleeve on your drill bit so you don't get into that gas tank. On the other side, you don't need to worry about the sleeve. There's nothing to hit. And then at that point, then you can just put this plastic cover back on. There's a plastic cover on the other side too. It doesn't have the gas tank opening, obviously, but it's the exact same thing. And this just tank cap off. You see it just sits right down in place, and then just take your rivets. Like I say, there's 5 of these on each side. Push it through and pop the head back in. Do that for the other 5, and that takes care of your installation. Like I say, it's the same procedure for both sides, so I'm just going to show the one. So that takes care of the Ricochet 1/2 inch UHMW belly skids. So you got a 1/2 inch protection front to rear, including floorboards. But like I say, for this video, this is just the 1/2 inch UHMW belly skids and floorboard skids. You see they come up, they wrap around the side, give you pretty nice protection all the way along the front here. Nice leading edges, nice all beveled and whatnot. So easy maintenance. This plate, like I say, this plate by itself pulls off. You don't have to take any other plate off or even loosen up any other plate. Once you have everything installed, this plate can just come right off for your oil changes. Get your oil filter real easy. You got drain holes for your front and rear differential, also along with your oil drain if you're not doing a filter change for some reason. Some people don't every now and then. So anyways, that's the gist of it. As you can see, there's only 2 spots to drill out. That's pretty straightforward. Not too big of a deal there, but pretty easy installation. You should be able to do this one by yourself probably I'd say within probably an hour and a half or so. Like I say, all bolt on minus the 2 spots that you have to drill, but other than that, just strictly bolt on. Thanks for watching.